Oh, how are you? Good. You ready to live boldly?
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, do you know what it means to live boldly? Well, then, you shouldn't say yes until we figure that out, right? A couple of things I want to bring to your attention. First of all, very first thing, dads, please stand so we can acknowledge you, all the fathers in the room. This is your first one. Oh, we got a first-time dad or first-time Father's Day dad in the audience. It's very cool. So grateful. I woke up today. You know, I always say this room is big enough for whatever's going on, and holidays are always wonderful, and also bring up whatever. And you know, I woke up just really missing my dad today. It's been 5 years, and I was like, you know, kind of sad, and that's okay. And so I'm just grateful for all of those men who show up as dads and grow into it, because I don't think anybody's ever prepared for it. Parenting. So the other thing that we're starting today, if you did not receive one of these, I'm going to invite you to grab one on your way out, and then we are beginning 40 days of prayer. For those of you who've been with us before, you know that about a year or so ago we did this and we manifested a building. Now we're ready to take the next step and to move into that. And so we always like to ground that in principle and in prayer. So I've called upon our practitioners to join me, and I'm inviting you to join me. So if you'll grab one of these, and just on a daily basis, it's easy. You can read through it or you can create your own, as we get ready to take the next step as spiritual community. You also may or may not have received an affirmation card. Each week for the next 7 weeks, there will be a new affirmation. You can sign it and date it. Why? Because we're going to come, I have police that are going to come and check to see how you're doing. And if you're not living boldly enough, they have permission to embarrass you and humiliate you. So, no, there's something powerful about putting our name to something. And so that's what that is all about, is just taking that next step to live our authentic life. So we're beginning a 7-week series on living boldly. And for me, that means to live our most authentic life. Many of you know my story, and I've shared various parts of it. I've discovered that it's best if I just share my story and not other people's, and then I don't get in trouble with other people. But most of you know that I grew up in a fairly traditional religious community and learned some things, was taught some things. I didn't learn them, but I was taught some things, obviously. And some of the things that I was taught is that there's 2 destinations when you finish this lifetime. So I wasn't Catholic because they get a third option, but I was, it was either up or down, right? You're going to heaven, you're going to hell. And as it turned out, I was in a category of hell-bound folk, simply by being who I was. Now, I didn't even realize who I was as a young person, but I knew somehow I was different. It wasn't until many years later that I began to understand that I was gay, and that I was that difference that I felt was, there was a name to it. As a young person, I didn't know, but I knew that something wasn't right. And so I began to believe that there was something wrong with me. Now, I don't know if anybody else has ever had that experience. That somehow you didn't feel as if you conformed. That somehow these ideas that you had about life, or perhaps it had to do with the color of your skin, maybe it had to do with your orientation, maybe it had to do with being an artist in a family of lawyers, maybe it had to do with something, I don't know, that you felt you didn't belong, and therefore there was something wrong with you. Right? See, we don't seem to think, maybe there's something wrong with the world, right? It's obviously something wrong with me. So we begin to develop our coping skills to help us to deal with the world around us. And we think, boy, if I could only conform, if I can only be like the other people. And so we may have developed skills and strategies to show up as our inauthentic self. Right? We didn't call it that, obviously, but isn't that the truth? So we began to say, okay, well, I've got to act a certain way or be a certain way or do all these things so that I can be okay. But the problem with that is it doesn't work. So I always say there's two ways that we enter into our spiritual growth and development. The first way comes from some divine discontent, some inner longing, some sense that there's something more to our life, there's something more that needs to be expressed. I remember as a young person, again, nothing wrong with the church I was in, I just remember as a kid thinking, wait a minute, you mean we're the only group that gets to go to heaven? We were Southern Baptists. I'm not even sure they thought the other Baptists got to go to heaven, you know? I mean, is heaven this exclusive of a club? You know, I don't know. But, and I remember thinking, how can that be? How can it be if there's one loving God that would, it didn't compute as a kid, still doesn't compute. Now I've come to be okay with it doesn't compute. So many years later, when I stepped into a center for spiritual living and they prayed and praised all paths to the divine, I was like, I need to check this out. 30 years later, I'm still checking this out. It's still working for me, right? So when we decide, so that's one way. We have an inner discontent, an inner longing, something, and we start a nice civilized pathway towards spiritual growth and development. The other doorway is called pain. It is called life falling apart in whatever way it fell apart for you. Divorce, loss, death, bankruptcy, pain, hurt, whatever it was, and you said, I have to find another way to do this. This is not working. And so I began a path and began to study so that I could transform that pain that I was in. Now, because of my firmly held opinion that I developed at the ripe old age of 10 years old, where I decided no religion was for me. I was above that, clearly. I never thought that I would find it in a church, even if it was called a center, right? But when I stepped into this community, I began to experience something that made sense, not only to my heart, but to my mind. And I began to understand that indeed there are universal spiritual principles, that there are, and those principles, because the thing about a principle is it is independent of your opinion. You can have whatever opinion you like about the principle of gravity. Good luck with that, right? I don't care how firmly held your opinion is and how you can document it. Gravity just is. And we all feel the effects of it. So when I began to understand that, I began to understand that it was not so much of a man outside of myself judging me and rewarding or punishing me, as it was my own way of being in the world that began then to influence the effects in my life. And so I learned a very powerful lesson in the very first class that I took. And they said, if you would like to change your life, ready for this? You're going to have to change. Well, that was annoying. Because I had developed an amazing set of skills in manipulating other people. I mean, really, I've spent all these years with the strategy, and you're telling me I'm going to have to be the one that changes? I'm not happy about this at all. And yet, as I began to discover that the universe doesn't play favorites, and we begin to understand that through the way that we think and what we believe and how we practice, that begins to influence the way, our experience of life. And so I began step by step to confront myself. You know, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you kind of think like, I'm done. I got it worked out. I figured out my issue. I'm done with that. I'm done. Right? Until next week, when some different version of that issue or some hybrid version of it shows up again to say, no, you're not done. So for me, growing up as a gay kid, thinking there was something wrong with me, I basically perceived the world as not safe. Now, I've been saying for some time, you all heard me say this, that the greatest gift in the world is to be born as an LGBT person. Right? Now, I don't want to be exclusive, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad about yourself here. If you're not, I don't want to discriminate or treat you poorly. I'm just saying. And here's why it's the greatest gift. Because when you're an LGBT person, if you choose to, you can have a coming out moment. Nobody that's straight gets to say, family, gather around here today. I think it's time I told you I'm straight. You know, there's no party, there's no parade, there's nothing. You get nothing. So I do think maybe my legacy in life will be is we'll create a coming out day for everybody that's not LGBT, the non-LGBT day for those folks that, okay? Because I feel bad how we've discriminated against you all these years. But you see, the great gift of coming out is to say, whether you love me or don't love me, whether you approve of me or don't approve of me, whether you support me or don't support me, I am going to live my authentic life. I am going to be who I am, and I'm going to live from that place and make my life work so it works for me. Amen. Thank you. Right? So, preach. So we just need to get this on the calendar. We're just going to have a coming out day, and everybody can come out in whatever way you want to say, I'm going to live boldly. I'm going to be who I am. I watched, again, you know, it's fascinating to watch how this whole issue has changed over the years, and it's changing so rapidly. But, you know, I remember when I shared the story of coming out to my dad, and in my powerful and brave way, I told his wife. This is called coming out from around the corner. And so we had this trip. We were flying back in his plane from Albuquerque back to Phoenix. And so it's me and him, you know, small plane. So you know the conversation's coming. And so finally he looks over and says, you know, so Deb tells me you're gay. And I said, yeah. He says, well, it's not what I would have chosen for you, but I just want you to be happy and know that I love you. I know. I was so annoyed. I'd spent like 19 years developing my argument why it was okay. I had points. I could have had a PowerPoint all ready to go, right? And you're just going to be okay? I don't think so, right? No. So I was relieved. And then he went on to say, and again, remember the context of the time, but you know, you need to know that in our industry, this isn't going to be okay, so this just needs to be between us. Right? Now again, 30-some years ago, right? So again, it was like, you're okay, kinda. I remember the first church that I thought I was going to go be their minister, and then something happened. And realized that it probably had to do with my orientation, and somebody got sideways and aware of that, and all of a sudden the deal fell apart, right? Again, you're okay, kinda. I remember when I went to ministry and somebody going through the candidating process, somebody said to me, well, we're not sure how all of our congregants are going to feel about having a gay minister. Now, I said, first of all, I'm not sure what that means, right? I'm not, you know, it's like saying, we're not sure how people are going to feel about having a black minister. Well, you know, or a tall minister or a short minister or a fat minister or a thin minister. It's like I don't identify myself as this category. In the plethora of things that I have available to me, that's one. And so you see the progression of thought that has happened. And it happened because people came out. They said, I am who I am and I will live my life boldly. I'm inviting all of us to live our lives boldly. You see, because as long as I waited for the world to accept me, I'd still be waiting. It's getting better, right? But we're not there yet. It was about coming to appreciate and love myself, faults and all, to say, here's who I am. And I will live according to my own way of being. You see, the first step of living boldly is we have to become our own authority. Really? Like, who would have thought to look there, right? To listen to that divine voice that is speaking to us, that is calling us to our greater self. But you see, we've gotten in a habit of not listening to the divine voice within us. We decided we'd rather be practical. Well, let's be realistic, right? These are all the things we say to ourselves rather than listen to who we are. So my journey has been about just living my authentic life. Now, you can put whatever labels you want on it. Handsome, charming, witty, fun, whatever. Put whatever labels you want on it. I don't care. Right? You got to get okay with yourself. And then you start to listen to what's being called forth. So I was just, as you know, I was gone last week, and I was up in Sun Valley walking a half marathon. 13.1 miles at 6,000 feet. Turns out after you've lived here for a while, it makes a difference. And so you say, I know people look at me and go, there's a runner. Right? Right? Got that runner look. But I looked at this, I made a commitment to myself at the beginning of this year that I was going to begin practicing extraordinary self-care. That I would rearrange my life so that it included good nutrition, that it included exercise, rest, all of the things to take good care of myself. I know, hello. I began to realize how ingrained in my way of being was you take care of everything and everyone else first, and whatever's left over, you get to have. And so I put myself first. And so in putting this goal of and I really do walk, it's too hard to run on my knee, I realized that I was going to train for it and get ready for it. Mike and I did this last year. And now Mike, for those of you, Mike, stand up real quick just so they know who I'm talking about. Now, he's a runner. Got legs like, and it was like I always say, when last year when we did this together, we were like neck and neck until the race started. So this year I was like, okay, I'm really going to train for it this year because I'm geared and I've been working a program. And again, I had to get beyond my mindset that I was going to have to look like Mike or be like Mike or whatever, because clearly that's not happening. But I decided to train for my race. Now, here's the exciting news. 174 participants in this race. Of those 174, I was 173rd. And so I beat the gal that kept stopping to take pictures along the way. I'll take it. A win is a win, right? Here's the other news about it. I had most improved time. Hello? I beat last year's time by 17 and a half minutes. I know. which means I went from really, really slow to really slow. I know, it's impressive, very impressive. And here's the other thing. In the short, fat old men category, I was first. So what race are you going to run? That's the real question. You see, if I compare myself to a Mike or these runners or these tall, skinny, fast people, then I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? Right? But we do that in life, don't we? Am I the only one that does this? Tell me I'm not. We do this. Well, I can't do that because look at so-and-so. So here's what I want you to hear. This whole idea of living boldly is not be the biggest, the best, the most famous, the most rich. It's run your race. You see, it was a great discipline because I trained for this race. I knew what it would take, and I knew that if I stayed with it, I improved my time by almost 20 minutes. Now, if you start slow enough, you can make amazing progress, but next year I'll beat it by another 15. I'm convinced of it, right? Because it's about my race. And as soon as everybody went whoosh out the gate, here I am. Here they all go, right? There was a part of me that's like, you better get running. But it wasn't my race. My race was to complete it in the way that I trained for. Now, I also forgot about that last mile that's like 6% incline. It was brutal because I was really trying to get for under 3 hours. It's 3 hours and 10, but that last mile is like, whew, I have muscles that we don't need to talk about that. So I share this with you only because I think we're all in a habit of comparing ourselves to the people around us. And somehow, for some convoluted reason, we decide that the people around us are right and there's something wrong with us. Instead of being able to ask ourselves that question, what is the gift that I uniquely bring to the world? What is it that the divine is calling upon in me, through me, to be revealed and expressed? So when we begin to listen to this, living boldly has to do with saying, I'm going to live from that joyous, authentic place. I'm going to practice unconditional love for myself. I'm going to appreciate who I am for who I am. I'm going to begin to honor those divine whisperings that I'm hearing. I'm going to listen to the gifts that I bring forward. You see, to me, it's so interesting that often we miss our gift because it's so natural to us. I know this whole public speaking course that we're about to start was something that came because somebody said, will you help me? And my friend said, you're brilliant at this. You should teach others how to do this. And I was like, really? Doesn't everybody know how to do this? It was my natural thing. Sometimes it would be like you girls going, well, we just sing. Like, let me tell you, I sing, and it ain't nothing like what you guys got going on, right? There's a reason I'm a speaker, not a singer, right? Sometimes our gifts are so natural to us that we don't even honor them. We don't even recognize them. But we want to listen to what is being called forth and live boldly, live authentically, live joyously. That in the once in a lifetime, and I mean infinite lifetimes, the billions of people on our planet today, there's one of you. What are you being called forth to bring? Who are you being called to be? What are you being called to learn, to listen, to share? It's exciting. So as we go through this series, each week we're going to look at one principle. Now, I would like to tell you, in fact, I might just tell you, you're going to hear things you never, ever heard before. I've been keeping it all in my little secret gold box that I keep stored away of secrets of the universe that you've never heard. And each week I will bring one out and you'll go, wow, why didn't he ever tell us that? Right? This is not earth-shaking stuff, but each week we're going to look at a principle Because I am convinced that as we learn to listen to that which is divine within us, as we learn to bring that forth, as we let go of the should-be self to live from the authentic self, then our lives are healed and transformed, and we will have an influence in ways that we could never have before. One last story. Now, fundamental belief, core belief, there's something wrong with me. And we know that those core beliefs are like onions. You peel off a layer, you're not done. There's another layer, there's another layer. So, hired into a ministry, began to develop that ministry. It grew really fast. Within 6 months, we'd gone from about 20 people to about 120 people. Things were happening, things were growing. 2 years into the ministry, I had the opportunity to begin a new ministry, which is a really polite way of saying you got fired and had to find a new job. So, and I was invited to start this new ministry because of some weird stuff. I won't go into that whole story, but the essence of it was I had a guy in the community who was kind of working behind the scenes, borderline if you're familiar with psychological terms. But what he was saying was, this guy is a con man. And blah, 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 blah. So it all blew up. I chose to leave and begin a new ministry and started a new ministry with all the people that had come to see me in the first place. But the lesson for that was not, why did this bad thing happen to me? Was, where's the truth in this? And I realized if I have somebody showing up in my life saying, you're a con man, it wasn't because I was embezzling money or all that sort of thing. It was because I was not living my authentic self. I was a minister now. Let me just stuff all of my feelings and smile graciously at you. Right? The greatest gift of my life, it turns out, was that experience. Because I was freed once again to come out and live the authentic life. This is who I am. This is my vision for ministry. This is how we will do ministry together here. And this is where we're going. And if that doesn't work for you, how can we support you in finding a community that will? Which before I was always like, oh, how do I have to be different because I'm wrong, right? You see, there's a very powerful lesson when we begin to understand that we are our own authority, that we create our own reality, and that we get to invite into our experience those who will love and support us for exactly who we are. And when we have people that aren't loving and supporting us for exactly and fully who we are, we get to love them and possibly release them. It's not always easy, but so worth it. The good news in the vacuum that is created, all the people that come to celebrate life the way you celebrate life. So, my friends, the community that we are creating here together, you need to thank me for going through that pain so that I'm not still the same miserable, codependent mess that I used to be, but rather we're learning as community to live joyous, authentic, powerful lives. That who you are is a divine emanation of this one living Spirit. And we celebrate and honor you in living that fully. I invite you to join us over the next 6 weeks now. Each week as we work with one of these series, each week we'll have a pledge card. Mary Cordell, generous person that she is, has told me that for everybody that comes for all 7 weeks and completes those cards, a new car. This is how confident they're not going to do it I am, so, Plus, you get to have an empowered, boldful life. So we invite you to do that. Just know that we're all on a journey together, that it's a beautiful and magnificent thing. And I feel loved and honored to share this journey with you. Let us pray. As we move deeply into that awareness of this one ever-present life and reality that is always seeking its highest self-expression, We remember that there is indeed one life, one power, one infinite being. And that it is in this divine presence that we live, that we move, that we have our being. Even the breath that we breathe is governed by an intelligence beyond ourselves. So everywhere we look, everything we see is the divine interacting with the divine. Remembering this fundamental truth, we choose in this moment to remember the truth of who we are. Whole, perfect, divine beings, bringing forth a greater possibility, a greater reality. We're saying yes to that authentic voice that lives within us, that is calling forth our greater yet to be. We are knowing the truth that we are created in the image and the likeness of that which is whole and divine. We give thanks for the wholeness as it reveals itself as health, as well-being, as vitality. We give thanks for the inner realization that we are abundant beings right here and right now, for we are one with that infinite source and substance of all that is. We give thanks for the power of unconditional love that is healing and transforming our lives even now. We fully and freely forgive ourselves, making it so easy to fully and freely forgive others. We choose in this moment to live boldly, to live from that joyous, authentic place of being. We call forth that which is the highest within us. We listen to the divine promptings of Spirit, guiding and directing our journey. And we know in this moment we are blessed. So I invite you in this moment, if there is a burden on your heart, if there is something holding you back, that we be willing to release that now, to surrender and let go, and in the void to allow the divine light to lift us, to heal us, to bless us. This is the moment of new creation, and so we step boldly into it. How grateful I am for this inner spiritual realization. How grateful I am for its perfect demonstration, and how grateful I am for a law of mind operating upon the consciousness established here. We extend a blessing from this holistic point of view. We bless ourselves, we bless each other, we bless this spiritual community. So grateful for the divine light that we are charged with bringing forth. We bless our brothers and sisters around the planet this day. We're holding that high vision for a planet at peace, a world that works for all. And as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For we do know there are many pathways to the divine, and so we honor and celebrate them all. How good it is to know this truth. Simply invite you to breathe into the consciousness established here, to know the new reality that is seeking its expression through you and as you, to give thanks. And so I release this word into that law, knowing that it operates upon the consciousness we have established here in perfect timing, in divine right order, that it is indeed good and very good. And so we let it be, as together we say, and so it is.